I'm a part of several different running groups, and one of them is a hilarious group. It's called Slow AF Runners. I want to introduce you to Jess Wyatt, somebody who has just had a huge milestone. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm
Absolutely,
so excited to
absolutely.
be here.
We are so excited to have you. And if y'all see her background, if you're watching on YouTube, it is so incredible. Tons and tons of bibs. So tell me a little bit about the background first.
My bibs back there.
Yeah.
So, I'm one of those people who save everything from races. Like, I know a lot of people throw away bibs and stuff, but where I'm at right now is kind of like my sanctuary where I have like my Peloton bike and where I do a lot of like weight training. So, I like to commemorate, how far I've came, and I like to hang those on the wall. There's bibs from all kinds of races everywhere, all different paces, all different points of my life. So they mean a lot to me, and they remind me of who I am and where I started and where I am today. So they mean a lot to me.
That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that. So let's jump in. Who is Jess? Where did she come from? How did you start running?
So I am from a small town in Tennessee, East Tennessee, um, and I started running back in 2012. Just like anybody, most of the people, they want to get healthy, they want to lose maybe a little bit of weight. And running was a very scary thing for me because I played softball in high school, and I had a really hard time running. I was, at that point, I was over 300 pounds, and I really struggled, but I loved the sport and I loved playing softball. Um, but my senior year of high school, I just decided to start running.
Hmm.
There really wasn't a rhyme or reason besides the fact of I wanted to lose weight.
Mhm.
And I think ultimately I never wanted to lose weight for me, which we can talk about later on in some point.
Mm.
But I just did a 5K and I fell in love, because it's just you versus you out there, and that's
Yeah.
very special. So
Wow.
that's where I started everything. Since then, I've done a lot of 5Ks that I do not like. I do not like 5Ks.
5Ks are not your favorite.
No,
Why?
they are, I don't know. Like, I like to be able to enjoy myself and take my time. So like the longer distances are my thing. Because it's all about a journey for me.
Yeah.
So 5Ks, they can be pretty fast, and
Like,
I
okay, I got up early for
yes.
what?
Yes, I mean, I would still do 5Ks if that's where you're wanting to start. I think that's wonderful. That's a great starting point. But as you get into running and you do different distances, you find out what you really love.
Yeah.
And yeah, and
What's your favorite? Mine is the half.
that is my favorite as well.
Yeah.
Because
Just
it's like,
enough.
yeah, it's just enough that you can be out there with yourself and
Yeah.
challenge yourself and spend time with yourself and meet some really cool people too.
Yeah.
Um, so that's why I really enjoy it. And there's places that have beautiful half marathons, and you get to see so much.
Yeah.
And like for me, in those 3 hours, I think it's really fun.
What's your favorite half that you've done?
So I love the Blue Ridge Half Marathon. It
Mm.
is in Roanoke, Virginia, and it's coined as the world's toughest marathon
Oh.
because you climb two mountains, so Mill Mountain and Peakwood. But it's a really good time. And what I love about that race is I'm not the fastest girl in the bunch, and they really take the time to make everybody feel special out
Mm.
there. They don't take up the mats. They include everyone, and
Mhm.
I have been an ambassador for that race multiple times just because of that, meaning so much to somebody who's in the back of the
Mhm.
pack.
But you say
I
mountains?
Yes,
Ugh.
yes.
So here in Atlanta, we have a very hilly topography. I mean, it is
Mhm.
extremely hilly. So, mountain though, I'm like, I don't know. Is it like seriously like you're going up an incline?
Yeah, have you ever been to, like, a state park or
Mhm.
anything like that?
Mhm.
Um, so a lot of our state parks in Tennessee, to get to the peaks, you have to climb in your car to get to the top, to
Okay.
get
Oh
to where the
yeah.
trails are, and
Right.
essentially that's how that is in Roanoke, because there's a
Wow.
big star atop of Mill Mountain, and they have a zoo up there.
Wow.
So you essentially start in downtown Roanoke and travel up, but you do get to go down. So
Okay, that's nice. Now
yeah.
how long did it okay, so for everybody who's watching, if you don't know me by now, I don't care about pace. I hate when people talk about how fast or slow people are, but we're gonna talk about it just because it is just the topic of
Mhm.
every single runner. Even though we're like, "Oh, pace, your race," everybody talks about it. So
Right.
for that, because of such a, treacherous and, like, the steep incline and all that, how long did it take you for that race?
I have done it anywhere from, like, 3 hours and 15 minutes to, like, 3 hours and 42 minutes.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's grueling, and they have a full marathon option, um, and then they have a double marathon option.
Okay.
So,
That
it's
goes
wild, like
crazy.
yeah, so, I feel like with that one, it's very strategic, though,
Okay.
and that's when I started really experimenting with the interval running
Yeah.
and really got into it because, I feel like in a race like that, I mean, of course, there are some people who can just do it and
Yeah.
break it out, which is wonderful, but,
But what's
with
the
my running
point? If you're
yeah,
finishing the same amount of time yeah.
well, and one thing you have to think about with races that include such a high incline of that,
Mm.
and once you go down, you have to go back up, so there's 2,
Yeah.
essentially, and the
Yeah.
second one is way far worse than the first. So, um I feel like you have to, like, take into effect that you could injure yourself.
Yeah.
You really can on, inclines of that stature. So, any race I go into, I try to play smart,
Mm.
because I've been injured numerous times, and it's just in the end, it's just not worth
Worth
it
it. It's not
because
worth
it's
it.
gonna put you out, and
Yeah.
you're gonna have a lot of medical bills and a lot of PT that you
And
don't wanna
mad that you can't run.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've
So
been there, so
you mentioned that you started running for weight loss for somebody else. I would love to dive into that.
Um, so I just like to give a trigger warning because I am want to speak about eating disorder and weight and things like that. Just I know that in a part of my healing process that type of subject has really bothered me in some instances.
Mhm.
So I just like to give that for the viewers.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I was always in high school, I was always the overweight girl, always. And my mom was very fitness oriented. She had lost a bunch
Mm.
of weight and she was always like, "Hey, why don't you do this? Hey, why don't you do this?" And I was just like, I really have no desire. And
Mhm.
I went to the doctor and I had at that point found out I was pre-diabetic, which is kind of,
Mm.
scary. So I was like, well, I really need to do this. So in the first year, I lost 128 pounds,
Wow.
which is very unhealthy. Um,
Wow. Yeah.
and once the weight started coming off and I started seeing people treating me differently, it became a thing like a cat and mouse game. Like I kept wanting more and more
Yeah.
and more. In high school, I was always the overweight girl, always. And my mom was very fitness oriented. She had lost a bunch
Mhm.
of weight and she was always like, "Hey, why don't you do this? Hey, why don't you do this?" And I was just like, I really have no desire. And
Mhm.
I went to the doctor and I had at that point found out I was pre-diabetic, which is kind of,
Mm.
scary. So I was like, well, I really need to do this. So in the first year, I lost 128 pounds,
Wow.
which is very unhealthy. Um,
Wow. Yeah.
and once the weight started coming off and I started seeing people treating me differently, it became a thing like a cat and mouse game. Like I kept wanting more and more
Yeah.
and more because I was never happy.
Were you like
And
a upperclassman at the time?
yes, I was a senior. So
Okay.
I was hitting all those big
Yeah.
milestones.
Yeah.
And it was great going to get a prom dress that was like 2 sizes smaller than last year, things of
Yeah.
that nature.
Yeah.
But, once I got in college, is I feel like it just kept feeding, I guess. Like things just kept happening. And when I first started the weight loss process, I had a goal and I became very fixated on that goal. Even though it probably wasn't realistic for me and my
Mhm.
body type,
Mhm.
um, that was my goal. And I did get within 8 pounds of that goal.
Mm.
But in order to get there, I had to starve myself.
Mm.
I had to use diuretics.
Wow.
I used tea to make me use the restroom. It was a very scary process, but I never felt like I was doing any of it for me at the
Yeah.
time. And when you see things change, like your outliers in the environment, like your pace is getting faster, you're getting faster. You get people coming up to you because that was the one thing as like a bigger girl, if you develop an eating disorder, it was always like, oh, you look so great.
Right. Right.
And the breakthrough moment for me with that was, as you can see, I have a lot of hair
Mhm.
and I actually had to go get it cut off because it was falling out. And because I wasn't giving myself nutrition.
Yeah.
So I went and got my hair cut, and the lady basically pulled me aside and was like, I'm having to cut your hair to your shoulders because your hair is falling out as I'm cutting it. And I think that's when I realized like something was not
Mhm.
right.
Mhm.
And
Mm.
I I developed all kinds of problems. Like I have hypothyroidism now.
Mm.
I got diagnosed with celiac disease.
Mm.
Um,
And you
so
attributed that to all of the non-eating nutrition of food and starving and
yes, I
wow.
really do. And I'm even to a point now, an eating disorder just psychologically does so much to you.
Mm.
So even now, even though I've been through therapy and I feel a lot better about everything, it's still like a day-to-day struggle because I mean, I subconsciously don't eat. Like
Mhm.
I'll look down and I've only ate 400 calories for the day.
Mm.
And there was one point during all of this that I was eating like 700 and I was training for ultra marathons and
Wow.
I was starving myself. And I did
Mm.
really well then,
Right.
but I'm just like,
You know that's not healthy.
no,
Yeah.
no. And it makes
Wow.
me want to try again because I'm like, now that
Yeah.
I'm into a point to where I'm healthy and I'm
Yeah. What
like
can you do?
stronger. Yeah,
Yeah.
like I wonder what I'm capable of.
Wow.
And but yeah,
Mm.
it's been a really crazy ride for sure.
Mm.
And that's like one of the main reasons I was so excited to come on here and talk with you
Mhm.
is just because I want people to realize that to be a runner, you don't have to look a certain way, you don't have to be a certain weight.
Yeah.
It's you don't need to contort yourself to fit a mold.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I did for almost 10 years
Wow.
because I was just searching for the acceptance in the running world
Mhm.
when and I feel like at that time, which I don't know if it was around or not, or if I just wasn't a part of it, I just feel like the communities here recently for Back of the Packers and people who don't fit that mold has just taken
Yeah.
off.
I agree. I agree. And I've only been running since COVID, and
Uh-huh.
I flirted with it when I was in my 30s just because I knew I loved being outdoors, but I never did
Right.
any races or anything like that, and so when COVID hit, I started racing, and even then, just going on YouTube and looking for people that look like me who were my pace, who
Mhm.
weren't runners or athletes, it was difficult, and so I agree, like, on Facebook now, finding a community of people who look like you, run like you, and accept who you are, not
Mhm.
having to change, yeah, it's exploded for sure.
Yeah, and it's nice to have that type of community. And I mean, I make videos on TikTok, I do things like that, and I have a measly 2,000 followers.
Mhm.
But you
Mhm.
know what? If I can change somebody's viewpoint,
That's right. Mhm.
that's one of the things that I think I did so wrong when I started running is I just did it for all the wrong reasons.
Mhm.
And I did fall in love with it. You know, I'm very thankful that I found my thing and I
Yeah.
fell in love with it, and it's more about the run now than ever.
Yeah.
But you know,
Yeah.
just people talk about your why a lot, and I
Mhm.
feel like it's really important to focus on that when you start
Mhm.
running.
Yeah.
And I
Like
mean, I'm not saying that like doing running to lose weight and get healthy is a bad thing.
right.
It's not. I mean, that's
The starting
great.
point.
Yes,
Yeah.
but it's just
Yeah.
very easy to get caught up in things.
I have a friend who she was run friend. She was losing weight. She lost a ton of weight initially, like your
Mhm,
body typically does when you start doing any type of cardio, you immediately lose the weight. And then
mhm.
as she was running more and more, she wasn't losing the weight. And then she started doing boot camp and it was like hardcore and it was still cardio.
Yeah.
like and she ended up getting injured and having to have surgery. And I was like, "Girl, I think you're doing a little too much." But then when you tell somebody that, it's like, "You don't know, like, I'm doing great. I lost 100 pounds." Like, it's a pushback, and you on
Mhm.
the outside seeing, you are she would go from a run, like a 12-mile run, and then go straight to boot camp. And this
I've
was,
done
like,
that.
4 days a week. I'm like,
Mhm.
"Okay, we want you to run for a long time." And so recently having to have that surgery, it just broke my heart
Mhm.
because she now feels like she'll never be able to run. And I told her, I said, "Well, with God, all things are possible, but please, like, take your time to recover." And of
Mhm.
course, though, she's she's been out at 5Ks and walking, but I'm like, I just want you to heal completely. But there's
Right.
such a pressure. There is an
Mhm.
internal pressure in the running community, and if you are not, armored up for what's out there, you will get sucked in. I remember my first year running, I got sucked in, and I had to have someone who was in the running community say, "Sit your feet down." He said, "You need to
Yeah.
sit down because you are doing too much."
Mhm.
And I thought that I was doing what I needed to do because I found the thing and I was feeling good, but I was gone and I ended up injuring myself. I got an IT band injury and then I got mad because I couldn't run and I was beating myself up like, okay, now, how, because
Mhm.
mine was mental health. I was running for my mental health. And so I'm like, if I can't run, then oh my God, I'm gonna lose my mind. And I'm like, after he told me that,
And that's me, like, I recently became an ambassador for the Still I Run. I
nice.
don't know if you've ever heard of them before, but
Congratulations.
they're wonderful, and, you know, during COVID, like, running was such a big mental health thing for me
Yeah,
because I'm one of those people who thrive on being around people and
me
having
too.
interaction with others.
Yep.
So, I was at home alone, you know, for months.
Mhm.
And I was so excited when they're like, you know, you can get outside and you can go run and you can do these things. And I feel like I was like hiking every day or
Yeah.
running every day. And it was just so nice to be able to get out there. But like you said, when you get injured and you use it for that mental health aspect, it's very scary.
Yep.
But I was very blessed this year and was able to find like a another form of exercise that I love. I love to dance,
Ooh.
and so it's good to have that too. You know,
Yes.
I found that some movement is what really helps me.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah.
it's still scary when doc is like, you know, you can't run, you can't walk just yet. You know, and you're just like, oh gosh, this is going to be bad for me and the people around me.
Uh-huh. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I think when I had my injury, I started swimming a little more
Mhm.
and cycling and yeah, that was definitely helpful. Let's jump into this New York thing because I want to know. I've not run the only marathon that I've run is Chicago. And that was because of peer pressure. But now I'm sucked in the world and I will definitely do another one. But New York is like number 5 on my list.
New York was something, and that's why I have my shirt on today because
Yes.
I get emotional when I talk about New York.
Take
Um,
us back to, like, when you first decided you wanted to run New York, any obstacles, all of that?
So you're going to think this is wild, but I decided I wanted to do New York the year I started running.
Okay, that is wild.
Yeah, and it was I'm not really sure. Um, I think it was a conversation I had with my really good friend Rose
Okay.
at a 5K. She had told me, she's like, "You're going to do a half marathon," and then she's like, "When after you do a half marathon, she's like, you're going to do a marathon. Like, what about New York?" And I was just like, "Oh." And so like I
Oh, wow.
started doing like research on it, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, like this is magical." Like the logistics of it, and so I started applying that next year, not even running a half marathon.
Oh, wow.
And it took me 10 years to get there. Yeah.
And you applied every year?
Yes. Yes. And then technically I got in COVID year.
Oh,
And
wow.
I yeah, of course.
Thanks,
And
guys.
then yeah, I found out in February, and then COVID shutdown started in March. And
Uh-huh.
I was just like, what are they gonna do? Because like, I
Mhm.
mean, I have all this time to train, which is
Right.
great. But I was like, what am I gonna do? And luckily at that point I had already ran a marathon.
Okay.
So I'd already
What
know
was that one?
so it was actually with a group called Mainly Marathons,
Okay.
and they go around the country, and they have like a band of people that follow them and who are wanting to run a race in all 50 states.
Okay.
So, and it's very laid back, it's very chill. They did it at my local park. Um, and I don't even know what my time was, but I know
Mhm.
I did the distance.
Mhm.
And it was really nice. It was a good introduction to
Mhm.
the mileage.
Mhm.
And but I decided when they sent out the email we could defer to 2020, 2021, or 2022.
Oh.
And I just decided, I didn't know how COVID was going to go. I didn't know
Mhm.
if I was going to catch COVID.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm just going to be safe, and I'm going to push it out to 2022.
Wow.
So that's what I did. So 10 years.
Wow.
Hmm.
That's pretty incredible because many people would have quit.
Yes. And that was my goal. It's kind of like for me, it was kind of like, how when you get married and you like, leading up to like to the wedding, it's like so much
Yeah.
anticipation. And then you get there and it's over and you're just like, what?
That was it?
But I tell people like New York was nothing what I expected,
Mm.
but it was everything I needed.
Wow. Talk
Um,
about that.
so, um, probably gonna start crying again. I'm sorry.
Oh.
So, the April before I went and ran New York, I lost my stepdad,
Mm.
and he was a very big cheerleader for me because, like, no matter what element came my way, he was always like, "Jess, like you're doing New York, like you're gonna do this, you're gonna run
Mm.
this," and so losing him was like super hard, and but and I was just having like a lot of health issues. Like I kept gaining weight. I didn't know what was happening. I mean, I knew during marathon training like you were supposed to gain
Right.
weight. Um but I just felt really like I didn't feel my best. Even through training, I had some stomach issues.
Mm.
Um it was a hard training cycle. And
How long do you normally train for your marathon?
so the way I did it is I started in January and trained for a half, and then did a
Mhm.
half in
Okay.
August, and then kept building upon that
Okay. Makes
initially.
sense.
So that just seems to be what works for me,
Mhm.
because I feel like if I go and do a half and then I like, back out of it for a couple weeks and then I try to go back into marathon running,
Mhm. Don't
it's
have the
just, I
motivation.
can't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why. Like those little breaks just
Yeah.
don't. Um, but uh, I ran New York. I faced some demons out there,
Mm.
and that's why I say like I truly think that like God put that in front of me for me to do, because he knew I had some things to like deal with.
Yeah.
And out there I was with myself. I mean, the back of the Packers were great. I made some
Mhm.
wonderful friends through training and through
Mm.
a Facebook group called Runners Marathon, New York
Mhm.
Marathon group, and had great people to hang out with before the race. But once I got out there, it was just me,
Yeah.
and I did um, I did run out of water on the course.
Mm.
I didn't have a lot of crowd support,
Mm.
but I feel like it was all like meant to
Meant
happen
to
that
be.
way,
Yeah. 'Cause let's
and
let's let's pause for a little bit. A lot of people who may not have ever run a marathon or a race,
mhm,
they typically have water stations, hydration stations out there every, what, 2, 3 miles?
mhm, yeah.
And oftentimes, if you're fast, you get all the goods, and if you are slower, they start packing up or they run out of water
Mhm.
or they run out of gels and stuff. Okay.
And this particular New York 2022, it was like one of the hottest on records. It was
Mm.
in the 70s in November in New York. So I was having like people in front of me on the course being pulled for heat
Oh,
exhaustion.
wow.
I mean, it was some
And you guys
crazy.
start late. New
Yes, I
York
started at
starts
11:30.
ooh,
Yeah. But
wow,
you have to get there. I got at the bridge, the Verrazano. I got there at like 7:30.
crazy.
Cuz you
I've
have
heard
to
that the logistics of New York is the hardest of all of the
mhm.
marathons. Wow.
Yes, you definitely have to plan ahead with it.
Mhm.
Um, but uh, then I went into the Bronx, and there was this man on a bicycle. I have no clue why, but it is what it is. He followed me through the whole Bronx section on a bike, yelling at me, telling me I was too fat to be out there,
What?
throwing poppets at me. Um, but again, there was no police, there was no personnel, so it just was what it was. So
No way.
and leading up to that portion, once I got to the Bronx was the first time I had not like Bluetooth somebody on the phone to talk to me because I
Mhm.
was very anxious of being out there by myself,
Yeah.
which there were others behind me and there was others in front of me, but it was a big enough distance that I didn't have really anybody in turn with me.
What would you say at that like, the time when you got to the Bronx? What
Mhm.
what time was it about?
Uh,
Was it starting to get dark?
it had just gotten dark, so
Yeah.
I'd say around 5:30.
Oh,
I would say.
yeah.
That's when it started getting super dark.
Yeah.
Once I had hit First Ave, um, it was like completely dark.
Yeah. Yeah.
But luckily, you're in a beautiful city with all kinds of lights, so that was
Mhm.
nice. But the Bronx was very dark
Mm.
in both terms.
Yeah.
It was actually dark, and then it was actually very dark. So,
Mm.
um, but as soon as I got off the bridge that led back into Manhattan towards Central Park, which was my last, I think it's the last 3 to 4 miles of the race,
Mhm.
that's when Project Finished reached out to me.
Mm.
And Project Finish is something that they have started in New York, and it's for the final finishers. And they bring very influential people out to give you your medals. They play music. They have people
Wow.
with signs, um, and it was just it was really magical. They came out and found me, and they helped me
Wow.
finish, and it was really what I needed to get to the finish line, and
How does
it was
that
very
work? You're
emotional.
running do they text you? Is it a like
So, I had found them on Instagram
mhm.
through Kelly Roberts. She is the leader of the Bad Beep Lady Gang, Bad Butt Lady Gang, BAL, BALG, and she had shared some information on there, and I was like, well, I was like, I can sit here and be proactive all day that I'm not going to need that support, but
Mhm.
in
Just
reality,
in
I
case.
probably will. Like, you
Yeah.
don't know what you're going to run
Yeah.
into. So, I had reached out to them days prior, and I was like, "Hey, there's a good chance it's going to take me longer than 6 hours." and I'm going to probably need support. And they had assigned somebody to meet me out there, and she started texting me and found me,
Mm.
and then ran the last, I think it was last 2 miles with me.
Mm.
And then once I got to the finish line barricades where they had everything up, she was like, "You got to go. I'm not going to finish this with you. Like, this is all
Mm.
you." So I took off, and
Mm.
it was really special. My husband and my brother met me right at the corner, and they started playing Post Malone "Congratulations,"
Oh.
and that's my thing. So you know, it was really special, and there was just so many great organizations that were out there supporting me, and there were people.
Mm.
It's just it was great. The finish like was worth everything. So
2 questions.
mhm.
What was your time when you finished? And then what was one demon that you mentioned that you faced while you were running that you feel like you had some type of resolution?
So my time was just over 7.5 hours. So it was it was like 30 minutes slower than my last marathon, but I
Mhm.
kind of figured it would be because New York is it's a very hard
Mhm.
course,
Mhm.
and that's what makes me feel so positive about doing other world
Yeah.
major marathons, because I
Yeah.
was like, I feel like I knocked the hard one out of the
Yeah.
way.
For sure.
um, but I don't know, like I've always struggled with just like how others view me as a
Yeah.
person, and once you get out there, you have time to like think about everything you've gone through and everything you've done, and you think of all the words that people have said to hurt you. And when you're out there and you're tired and you're thinking about giving up, they just start screaming
Mm.
like, quit, you're not worth it. you know what are you going to do? Quit because your brother and your husband flew across the world, first fly in
Mm.
their life, spent all this money, and you're just going to quit. And it's really hard to like ignore those voices, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
But essentially I told them to shut up. And I feel like that's really when like my healing era began, as I call it.
Yeah.
um, where I was, I'm slowly transitioning into understanding my worth as a person,
Mhm.
and just understanding who I am.
Mm. Well,
So,
I will be the first to tell you if nobody else has ever told you, you are such a light. You have so many experiences and valuable lessons that so many people will watch this and be inspired. I am inspired. I
well,
am
thank
very
you so
inspired
much.
by your story and by your vulnerability. To run 7.5 hours, it's pretty spectacular.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So I, I just want to be here, and that's my main goal. That's why, as I said earlier, that's my main goal, and why I share my TikToks and why I talk on here. And I mean, I'm only up to running about 4 miles right now.
Mhm.
Um, I started a new training block in January for a half marathon.
Nice.
And, you know, sometimes I feel like I'm starting again,
Mhm.
but it's completely fine. And I want to be there for other people
Mhm.
who, like you said, get on YouTube, get on TikTok, get on Facebook, and they see all these influencers making these videos, and they're just like, that's not me.
That's for
Like,
me. Yeah.
that's not me. I can't even run 30 seconds yet.
Whew, that was
Like,
me. Yeah.
like, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And
I can't breathe. How do I breathe? Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
My
And
husband said something to me when I first started running, and I just wanted to slap him. Now,
I,
my husband comes from police, he was an athlete. I never was an athlete, and so when I started running and I ran 2 miles consecutively, I was, like, in tears, like, I was so proud of myself,
Mhm.
and I came home and I was like, "Guess what? I did it," and he was like, "Okay, like, anybody can do that." And I was just like Man, like, you just don't know how much that just killed me.
But not everybody can do that. You
No.
know what I mean? And that's
Yep.
what I think about when I get out here some days, especially right now where I'm just having fun with things
Mhm.
and I just do a mile or I just do a
Yep.
mile and a half and I'm like, "Oh man, like anybody can like, oh my
Mm-mm.
gosh, I'm just doing a mile." But then again, like no, some people can't do
No.
that. Like
My
it's a s-
girlfriend said to me, she says, "You always respect the mile." She says, "Never say
Mhm.
just." And I've learned that because I used to say too, "Oh, I feel bad. I'm only doing it's just a mile." Mm-mm. Mm-mm. Just a mile? No, it's a mile, even if it's a half a mile.
Right.
Yep.
You're out there and you're celebrating your body,
Yep.
and I feel
Yep.
like that's so, that's so important to think about, and there's so many people who can't run and
Mhm.
have things and ailments that
Yep.
don't allow them to do that and don't allow them to move their body,
Yep.
and you really have to be appreciative of it because you get to run.
You get
It's
to
not a, "I
run.
have to," I get
I
to.
get to.
It's a blessing,
One of
so
my secret tricks for me whenever I'm doing a race or when I'm running a longer distance, I found that if I clap my hands and if I audibly say thank you, oh, that does wonders for my body. And thanking all of the volunteers, like I'll be in a race and I'm very observant of the people around me, listening to the stories, but I know everybody's so self-focused and I gotta get this done. I want this time. And when I
Mhm.
let that go and I'm just like, hey, you're doing great. Awesome. Thank you for being here. That gives me so much gas.
Yes, and something that I've started doing too, which in the community I live in now, I've became really good friends with some incredible runners.
Mm,
But if you just kind of challenge yourself, which I'm a very extroverted person, so I
mhm.
don't mind doing this.
Yeah.
But if you just go up to somebody and you're like, "Hey, my name's Jess. Like, what's your name? Why'd you start running?"
Yeah.
And you just listen to these people's stories, like it gives you so much fuel and so much
Absolutely.
fire in your heart,
Yep.
and then you see them on their course killing it, and you're
Yep.
just like, "Oh my gosh, that's,"
Yep.
it's just amazing all the stories that
Mhm.
people have to share, and some are more a little bit more hesitant, which is fine,
Mhm. Yeah.
but, yeah, I just this year I decided to start using my voice and not
Good
being
for
scared to
you.
take up room or be
Good for
too
you.
much, so
You are not too much, honey. You are not. I can't wait for the book to come out. That's gonna be awesome. So if you could tell the newest runner who's just got their shoes, they got fitted, they are like, "Okay, I got a training plan. Oh, I'm nervous." What would you tell that newbie runner?
I would say to give yourself grace, um, because when you get up in the morning, some days you're not gonna wanna get up right away and lace up those shoes and hit the concrete, um And, you really need to listen to your body because your body is going to tell you a lot of things. But at the same time, do not let that be like, oh, my stomach's a rumbling. I shouldn't run today. But just give yourself grace, give yourself time. If you get up at 8, if you're supposed to get up at 8 in the morning and go do your run and you get up at 8:15, just go out there and do what you can.
Yeah.
Um, you're you're allowing yourself to have movement, you're allowing yourself to have time that you've taken out of your day. So even if you had a 30-minute cap planned out and you got up late and now you only have 5 minutes before you have to start getting the kids breakfast and going,
Mhm.
go do it for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
feel like it's so powerful when you allow yourself grace.
That's so
It's
good.
very important.
I agree. I agree because I didn't in the beginning,
I
and
did
it
not either.
yeah. Yeah. All right, last thing, we're gonna do a rapid 4, and give me
Okay.
one word or you can do a sentence, right? Shoe of choice.
Oh.
No.
Can I have two?
Okay, you can have 2. When I do this
Okay. Um, so I love the Brooks Glycerin
Uh-huh.
for longer mileage,
Yeah.
like your marathon, half marathon distances. But right now I've become a little bit of a Hoka girly, a
I
Clifton
wanna
girly.
get into the Hoka world. I have 1 classic Clifton's,
Uh-huh.
and I got them from, like, Poshmark, but I wanna try some of the newer ones.
I feel like they're great for your shorter
Uh-huh.
distances. I personally see that they wear out a little bit faster than
Okay.
Brooks.
Okay.
So that's why I tend to cater them to like the shorter distances. So once I begin my half training in January, I probably will revert back to Brooks
Okay.
and do my Hokas like for the shorter
Yeah.
runs or work, things like that.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna try it. Alright. Give me a one crazy run story.
Hmm.
Something wild happened, a bathroom run.
I feel like the craziest thing, I don't know, like this just blew my mind. So we have in Kingsport, Tennessee, we have a race called the Crazy Eights that is
Okay.
held every July in coordinates with something we have called Fun Fest.
Okay.
And it's an 8K.
Okay.
And it's at nighttime. It's always humid or raining or both. It's a really tough race. And I came around the first corner and there are potholes in these roads, okay? And I don't feel like they're the best lit. People argue with me, but I can't see very well at night anyways. But this guy, he unfortunately his foot went into the pothole and he messed up his ankle pretty
Yes.
bad. But what like blew my mind is they're literally like this race is packed side to side
Uh-huh.
for the first few miles.
Yeah.
And it was like cuz I was behind it all. It was like all these people like came to him. It
Oh,
was like almost a
wow.
sea to help
Wow.
him. And I was like, "Oh my gosh." Like that is
Wow.
so amazing and like they got him up, got him off the course, got him where he needed to be. And
Mm.
I out of all the crazy things that I've experienced whether it be bathroom
Mhm.
mishaps and anything like that, bears on the
Yeah.
course. But I don't know, that just blew my mind.
One of the things that I love about running, the community of people, and
Mhm.
oftentimes, more times than not, you have that support. Now, I know if it's like somebody's trying to, get time, they're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
I hope you get up." But
Bye.
bye. Somebody help the guy. But that's wonderful that they came all to help him up. Have you ever cried during a race? And when was the last time you cried?
I cry all the time.
Me too, me too.
The last time I cried at a race was what race was that? It was at so I did an obstacle course race
Mhm.
in close to my hometown, and it was like my first race back since New York, since an injury. I
Yeah.
sprained my ankle at New York on the course. Don't know when,
Ah,
but I did. And then I got diagnosed with celiacs in
mm,
August. So it was like my first like race back
yeah,
saying like, "Hey, I'm still here. Like
yeah,
I can still do this." And it was just very emotional for me because there's points that I didn't know if I was going to run again.
yeah,
I just didn't know if my body was ready yet, when it would be ready. So, and I was respectful of that, but
yeah,
it was very emotional for me to be back out there and be like, okay, this is happening. I'm racing
yeah.
again.
I love it. Yeah, I cry all the time too, so I feel that. And then, any words of wisdom finally as we close out the podcast?
um, I just want people to feel like in the running community they're not alone. Again, just if you don't look a certain way or fit a certain cookie cutter mold, which there's nothing wrong with that. Looking a certain way, everybody is so beautiful, but it's very easy to let that deter you sometimes. It can be intimidating. It was very intimidating for me at first. And just, find those people who fuel your fire. Find your best friends in your running clubs. Find inspiration for others like Kelly Roberts, Latoya Snell, the Alley on the Run. There's
Yeah,
so many people that inspire me every day, and find those people. And lastly, never lose sight of who you are
mm,
and never feel like you're not enough or you're too much or you're not worthy of something because You are fearfully and wonderfully made the way you are, and you definitely need to celebrate that every day.
Thank you so much, Jess.
Thank you for
It
having
was a
me.
pleasure having you on. Hope to see you in a race.